feel the fear and do it anyway, right?
Right. Okay. I know every week I say I'm super excited to share my guests with you and all the coaching that we have and how we're going to continue to progress forward to understand and enjoy being desireful, attract, keep, and enjoy the right love in your life. And today I just got chills again because I know what gifts you're going to get. And you're about to. So we're embarking on something super duper fun. In prep for that, I thought I would do a quick overview, let's see if I can do it quickly, of the sessions that we've had before. And I'm going to tell you which session these things happened in so that if for some reason you feel like you missed something, you can look back in that session so that I've got them numbered. So that you can make sure that there's no gaps in your education or process or whatever. So for example, session 1, how to be attractive to the right love in your life. And we talked about how to develop an online profile to date. And because that we're meeting people online versus organically and in the wild. We're talking about all relationships. So not just if you're looking for a partner, but if you have a partner and you're already at that point in your relationship, how to represent yourself appropriately, presenting your best image and being your authentic self. So understanding your core values and being in alignment with who you truly are. Session 2, we talked about discover the secrets of connecting to make that love everlasting. And we talked about unlocking your divine feminine power and balancing it out with the masculine power so that the men could also gain the secret mysteries that are rarely shared. That was a dynamic one. In fact, we had some exercises like identify your personas and how they create who you truly are. And we used those personas later. So we used our values that we came up with the core value assignment to make sure that if we're making decisions on other people, they're in alignment who we truly are. And understanding our personas gave us a chance to figure out how to represent ourselves with different versions and like the identities that we hold. We also had the exercise put forward to take a saltwater bath and acknowledge every gorgeous aspect of yourself and acknowledge all that your body does for you. So not just being stuck in your head, but also moving through and appreciating your body. Session 3, we talked about how to create that vibe that reflects your personality and the image you would like to project. And this one was the opportunity where our photographer got in front of the camera and talked about using those personas we came up with and representing yourself in images, like 5 personas and 5 images that really represent who you truly are, so that when you're in alignment, you're attracting somebody who is also in alignment with you. We talked about a cat is a cat. So really ensuring that we're welcoming people in to our lives, understanding who they are and making sure the expectations of who they are now and who you could become with them are accurate on both parties' part. We started to introduce the relationship spiral at that point. We did a whiteboard. What are men looking at when they see you? And what are women looking at when they see you? We talked about plenty of fish in the sea and that there are a lot of piranhas. So you have to look out for that. Session 4, what does relationship success look like for you? And we talked again about our core values and considering how you will know when you're on the right track, when you're getting closer, when to establish boundaries, when to cut and run, when to upgrade the relationship, and how to adjust when you know, so you know what time to do one of those activities in the relationship. We introduced the relationship spiral there: discovery, chemistry, interaction, casual, and committed, how to move through those things, and when it's time to leave that chutes and ladders game and take the chute down, or when to climb the ladder up, when you're walking through the spiral, or when to take off and take the elevator down and start again. We talked about how to lead your love life, to find exactly the love you're looking for, and that dating's a practice to find the right love for you rather than trying to become the right one or changing to be the right one. I just had a conversation with someone like that this morning, and she was talking about, should I really let this guy go? And first she told me like 9 reasons he's not the right fit and 3 red flags. And I'm like, let's talk about scarcity. You're worried about letting him go because you're not going to find somebody else, but there are so many fish in the sea and you want to find the right one. So free him up to find the right one for him. Let him know that you're freeing yourself up to find the right person for you. We talked about blueberries and how we can, I know, those of you who missed this one, go back to the blueberry conversation, how we can enhance the energy in a room in very subtle and intimate ways that changes everything. We talked about the 4 characteristics of a love leader: integrity, authenticity, responsibility, and purpose. And in session 5, we're getting there, create the brand that personifies the most magnificent version of you. And that we clarified on what we desire in a loving relationship, how those images of your ideal relationship are formed, what blocks do you have, what do you question or doubt. We talked about considering impactful moments in your life that set an ideal, an expectation, or a deal breaker. And in session 6, how to choose the right partner in a changing world, we went deeper into the relationship spiral. We talked about how to spark your dating life and keep the relationship going. The process to find simple tools to find true love without settling. And we also talked about how we might be missing the spark in our dating and or our love life. And here we are in session 7. We talked about this activating our 7 love superpowers, plus tools to embody your love archetype. We talked about how to screen the right one for you, relationship red flags and green lights, how to spot a scammer. We talked about creating positive interactions to create sparks and have some fun. We discussed relationship mindset and how to enjoy the journey and overcoming sabotage. And today I introduce Amari Ice. So let me just check in with you guys. If any of those things, when you were like, I'm not sure I caught that one, that sounds like it's important to me, I might need a review. So I had said which session they were in so that you can circle back to them. And also when you put time on my schedule, again, it's in the chat, then we can talk about whatever strengths and weaknesses you have in that so that you are experiencing maximum success. And also next week, I'll be able to infuse the culmination of this program with as much love as possible. So with that, I'm going to introduce Amari Ice, the Prince of Hearts. Amari is a hypnotist, relationship coach, and matchmaker who helps gay singles develop their dating skills and heal subconscious patterns of self-sabotage so that love becomes inevitable. So Amari, thank you so much for joining us. Soul Catcher, my new nickname for you, or the nickname of the day anyway. I'm sure you get a lot of them as the days go on. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and just go for it if you're speaking extemporaneously?
Yeah, so I think you did a pretty great job introducing me. I'm a hypnotherapist, relationship coach, and gay matchmaker, and I love to play with words. Pretty funny guy, love to play, have all the childish fun you can think of. So this is going to be a pretty fun conversation that we're going to have. So I think it's hilarious that you stuck on the extemporaneous word for sure, because that's going to be I'm not going to be able to forget it now. I'm like, why
Do
did
I
I
need
use
a
that? No, she's.
presentation or can I speak extemporaneously? Like, this is my command.
So if you guys hear her say that over and over, it's okay to blame me because she's gonna keep that word. So yeah, this conversation is gonna be on self-matchmaking one-on-one, really about how to know if someone's right for you, where to go to recruit people, relationship readiness, managing expectations. We're gonna talk about attachment styles as well. So I always have like a plan or a presentation in the background, but I also like to speak based on the questions and energy in the room, hence the extemporaneous. So I wanted to start by asking you all if there are any questions you already knew you had, then I can make sure I bring them up in the conversation. Of course, if you have questions at the end too, we'll be able to talk then as well. But if you have any questions you already know about, attachment styles or dating or compatibility or whatever, now would be the time to let me know. If not, that's okay too, because we got a whole full presentation ready to go. So anybody know of a question that they definitely have now? No?
Michael?
All right, cool.
I don't know. Suddenly everybody got quiet. Do you guys, we're not really a quiet group.
All good. All right. So we'll just hop on in. If you do have any questions at any point, just go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll converse like that. So first things first, show of hands, how many of you, or if you don't have your video on, you can type this in the chat too. How many of you have heard of attachment styles or know what your attachment style is? So you've heard of it, or you know what yours is. Okay, great. This is going to be awesome. So I'll start with attachment styles. All right. And so this is under the guise of compatibility. Often we talk about, you know, our values, what we find attractive, personality compatibility, the capacity to meet our needs and deal breakers and all those things, which I'll also talk about today. But one of the things people rarely ever talk about is probably one of the most important things you need to know if you're single and looking for love, or if you're not single and in a relationship with someone, doesn't matter. Attachment styles are like the number one thing you need to be familiar with in order to really have a successful relationship. And so what attachment styles are is literally the way that we form connections with other people. And this comes from primarily the relationship we had with our caretakers growing up. So your mom, your dad, or whoever took care of you, whoever raised you as a little kid, especially before the age of 5 or 6. So those first 5 to 6 years of our lives are really impactful in terms of how we see the world, how we see relationships, and how we then create and form relationships as adults. So it's really fascinating. There are 4 attachment styles, and they are formed based on 2 scales that we measure. First is our fear of abandonment. So the extent to which we are afraid that the people we love or care about will leave us. The second scale is our fear of intimacy. So the extent to which we are uncomfortable with getting close to people because we don't believe they can meet our needs in the first place. Okay. And so these 2 scales create, if you think of like a, what do you call that? Number line in like algebra or whatever, right? So if you have very low fear of intimacy and low fear of abandonment, you have a secure attachment style. Okay. And about 50-ish% of people have a secure style. This means you're comfortable with closeness. You're comfortable giving your partner space when they need it. You don't make a big deal about relationships when you enter them. Like relationships are generally pretty peaceful for you in the grand scheme of things. Doesn't mean you don't have like conflict or disagreements with your partners, but there's no like extra conflict that's created just based on your interaction. So that's secure. Then you have the other 3 types, which are all insecure attachment styles. And so they're going to be categorized by either high fear of abandonment or high fear of intimacy, or both. So if you have a high fear of abandonment, but a low fear of intimacy, you have what we call an anxious or preoccupied attachment style. And the way this works, or the way it's formed, Imagine you have a 3-year-old child and the kid is in a room playing with toys and mom or dad is there. And then the parent leaves the room. The kid notices parents gone and kind of like gets upset, starts to cry because all kids cry when their parents leave the room, normal. And then parent comes back and kid goes and gets consoled, but kind of throws a tantrum a little bit, and is really upset that parent left. They get consoled and they will go back to play with the toys, but they'll keep looking over their shoulder to make sure that the parents aren't leaving again, right? They're preoccupied with the whereabouts of their parents because they're afraid that the parent is going to leave again. This is in contrast to the secure style where, yes, parents leave, the kid will still cry, but when the parent comes back, kid gets consoled, goes and plays with toys, and it's fine, right? The fact that the kid got consoled gives them the feeling of safety again that then allows them to go explore more on their own. But when we have anxious attachment style, what happens is the parenting, that sense of safety was insecure when we were kids. It was inconsistent. And so it keeps us like on our toes where we're always wondering, are you going to leave me now or not? Are you going to abandon me or are you going to stay? And so it was an inconsistent amount of parenting or a form of parenting that created that insecurity and wondering whether or not the people that we love are going to leave us. Okay. So then about 20% of people are going to have anxious attachment styles, preoccupied styles. Then we have the avoidant attachment style. And this is characterized by a low fear of abandonment. Like, I'm not afraid that you're going to leave me. However, a high fear of intimacy. Don't get too close. Okay. And so the way that this style forms is same example, 2-year-old, 3-year-old child, parent leaves the room, but in this case, the kid doesn't cry at all. Kid notices the parent is gone. And you can even see on the kid's face that they're a little upset about it, but they're not really showing it, right? And so the parent comes back into the room, the child notices, but keeps playing with toys. And you might be wondering, isn't that good? Like, I don't want my kid to cry when I leave the room. Like, what's wrong with that? They're like a 2 or 3-year-old kid, so it's not normal yet, right? And the reason that the child isn't crying is because also parenting was inconsistent, but the child made it up in his or her mind that no one else can meet their needs because the parent let them down so often. And so they believe that they have to take care of themselves, okay? And so what happens as an adult is, I see your hand, Michelle. 2 seconds. What happens as an adult is that kid doesn't allow themselves to get too close to people because they fear that you're not going to be able to take care of me. So I'm just not going to get close. Okay. Question, Michelle?
Of course, I need to put this into my head in a graph.
Yep.
I think I have something.
Absolutely.
I think I have something in the
That's
wrong
exactly
place.
it.
So
yeah. So
low abandonment and fear of intimacy are the X and Y axis. If I have low fear of intimacy and low abandonment, then my style is secure. But if it's low abandonment, high fear of intimacy, I'm anxious.
Yep.
And if I'm low fear of intimacy but high abandonment, is that what you're talking about right now?
Yep.
What's that called?
No. The opposite. Low fear of intimacy, high abandonment is anxious. Low fear of abandonment, high fear of intimacy is avoidant. Yeah.
I thought I had something wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can also pull up.
Somebody else has already done
this stuff for you. Yeah, I have a worksheet of it too that I can pull up and show on the screen. So that is the avoidant attachment style, and about 25% of people will have an avoidant style. What's really interesting to note here, I'll just say this now because it popped up, is that when it comes to dating online, people who are avoidant tend to be overrepresented on dating apps, because if we have a fear of intimacy, we also tend to be less satisfied in relationships, because the very thing, I'm going to say this a slightly different way. Okay. So we know that high fear of abandonment, low fear of intimacy is anxious. We know that high fear of intimacy, low fear of abandonment is avoidant, right? However, everybody who has an insecure style or not, we all experience anxiety, right? So it's not that a person who's avoidant doesn't experience anxiety. The attachment styles tell us what triggers our anxiety, okay? So for the preoccupied, anxious person, abandonment is what triggers their anxiety. For the avoidant person, too much closeness is what triggers their anxiety. That makes sense? Okay. And then the third style is when you have really high fear of abandonment and really high fear of intimacy. And we call that a disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment style. And only about 5% of people have this style. And this is usually formed when you've experienced some sort of like trauma in childhood, like maybe abuse or something like that. That's generally how it forms in childhood. Now, for all of us, about 70% of people's attachment styles are going to stay the same throughout their lifetime, regardless of what it is. The other 30% will have a style that changes. And there are only 3 ways that an attachment style can be changed. Okay. The first, in terms of going from secure to insecure. So how do you go from my attachment style is secure to something disrupted my security? This is definitely going to be a traumatic experience in adulthood. So for example, we know people who have gone to the military and then they go to war, and when they come back, they're totally different, and their sense of like connection and all of that has been warped because of war. So that's the way that attachment styles get changed for the negative when we go through a traumatic situation that really disrupts our sense of security in an immediate way, like war, or someone passes away suddenly through some like horrific event or something like that, something really intense that really causes that traumatic response can impact the attachment style for the negative. And then in terms of changing it for the positive, there are 2 ways, okay? The first is not fast. This is a very slow and steady wins the race. And this is getting into a relationship with someone who has a secure attachment style, okay? So if you have an anxious style or avoidant style or whatever, you can get into a relationship with someone who is secure, and over time, your attachment style will become more secure because a secure person doesn't trigger your anxiety in a relationship in terms of that fear of abandonment or fear of intimacy, okay, generally. The other way is to actually go through therapy, to work with someone who specializes in attachment styles and helping to heal those insecurities and childhood wounds that led to an insecure attachment style, okay? Those are ways it changes. Now, what's really interesting here is if you have an anxious style or an avoidant style, you probably have experienced a very particular pattern that we call the anxious avoidant trap. And what this means is people who are anxious tend to be most attracted to people who are avoidant, and people who are avoidant tend to be most attracted to people who are anxious, and they get caught up in this cycle of cat and mouse. So what this looks like is, you know, we're getting to know each other, something happened very organically, we like each other. And then say I have the anxious attachment style, I'm driven to closeness, right? I don't fear intimacy. And so I'm driven to take things closer, which is natural, right? When you're getting to know someone in a relationship, the natural progression is to get closer. However, that closeness triggers the anxiety in the avoidant person, and then they run away, okay? And then the anxious person is like, where are you going? And then they run away some more. And then the anxious person is like, okay, well, clearly you don't want this. Something's going on. Like, maybe we should just end this. Like, this is too much, right? And so, peace. Then the moment the anxiously attached person stops moving toward closeness, guess what happens? The avoidant person pops back up because now they aren't triggered anymore. However, the anxious person is like, oh, well, I guess you do want to be together. So guess what they do? They try to get closer, which then triggers the anxiety of the avoidant person. And since they abandon the anxious person, that triggers their anxiety and they want to get closer. So it's this cat and mouse game, and we call it the anxious avoidant trap. So if you have an anxious attachment style or an avoidant attachment style, your number one piece of advice for dating is to not date anyone unless they have a secure attachment style.
Yeah, but we don't put that
Okay.
in our online profile. I mean, I should be like,
Guess what? You
I'm
can. There's no
here,
reason not to.
everybody. You want me?
There's no reason not to. You can also ask this, like when we talk about first date questions or even questions on a dating app, you could always ask, hey, have you heard of attachment styles? Just like, have you heard of love languages or Myers-Briggs or whatever? Like you can ask those same questions and send people the text and have that conversation. So there's nothing, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. What do you say?
You have to pass a test to go out with me. But
Yeah,
I
pretty
wonder, are
much.
there other questions that you can ask? I'd like to come up with some organic questions to ask that would give us the answers to that without without saying specifically attachment styles. But this is fascinating. Sorry, go on.
About the
Yeah.
investigation.
So,
wait, what?
what do you say, Michael?
About the investigation.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it seems to me if you date somebody who's all about all I love you and all the rest of this thing to start with, then that would be the person that has the anxious, but not the person who's avoidant.
say that one more time. If what?
If you go out with somebody who's all about I love you and all that stuff to start with, that would be a sign of anxious.
Not necessarily. So just because your style is anxious or avoidant doesn't mean you won't, like someone or won't say the things that make them know you like them. It just means you won't necessarily have the capacity to deal with the intimacy if you're avoidant, or to give people space that they need if you're anxious. So because you are experiencing anxiety, it makes you react to that anxiety in a very specific way. And that's really what the attachment style tells us. So once you find out what yours is, and I gave a very simplified explanation of how they work, but there's a little more to each of the styles. And yes, you can totally ask questions, but the thing about anxiety or avoidance is that no matter what our attachment style is, we all experience those states. We've all been like, I don't want to talk to somebody right now. Like you just texted me, but I need a couple of minutes before I respond. Or we've all had times where we're like, oh my gosh, like my friend didn't text me when they got home. I hope they're okay. Like, right. And so it's not that just because you do it, you're anxious or avoidant. We all have the capacity for all the things. It's just that if we have a certain type of experience growing up, that makes that particular reaction our dominant way of showing up in the world. And that's what creates the patterns that can create stress in our relationships if we aren't with a person whose style is gonna create security for us, because relationships are about security. And if we are triggered and consistently anxious because of our partners, that doesn't lead itself to a happy, healthy relationship. We're going to be unsatisfied long term. And it's not that either of us are doing anything to intentionally trigger or create anxiety for the other. The way that we are programmed or conditioned based on those childhood experiences has created a certain pattern that if we are in each other's gravity for too long, they will trigger each other naturally. Okay, so that's how that works. Renee, did you have a question?
Ari. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, could you hear me? Okay, sorry. Yep. First of all, I want to make a comment. I hate your voice, man. I'm envious of it. So it's like it's so good. So I hate it. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so about the 3 ways that the attachment can be changed. Mm-hmm. Could that be within the same relationship? Like you're in one relationship and you did mention how it's, one push-pull kind of way, but can that change within the same relationship? And my second question is, you mentioned like the 5 love languages. Is there a quantitative test to take for this?
Great question. So the first one was, can it change in the same relationship? Give me a little more about that. What do you mean?
Okay, so somebody, I would probably be more of an avoidant, right? And I'm with someone that's more anxious. And then all of a sudden, just like you said, They pull back, and then you become the anxious relationship person. The other person becomes confident.
Gotcha. That's a really great question. So, in the normal scheme of things, right? When we look at everyday behaviors, right? There may be moments where that is true. But the thing about our attachment style is telling us that this is an overall pattern rather than just a moment. So, in a similar way, when we think of narcissism, right? Like, this is a good example of this. Only about 1% of people are textbook narcissists, right? However, all of us can have a trait that correlates to narcissism, right? Like, all of us can have narcissistic traits, but not be narcissists. And then those who are narcissists have all the textbook narcissistic traits, right? So, in the same way, like, we sometimes will be secure, we'll sometimes be a little insecure. Like, that's just normal. However, if your normal style is avoidant, then that's the normal style, and that will be true for you the majority of the time, unless you do some work to change that, or you're in a relationship with a partner who is more secure. So the short answer is yes, you can have moments of anxiety or avoidance, but moments do not an attachment style make.
And is there a quantitative test you can take for it?
Yes. So you can go to, there are a few of them. If you Google attachment style assessment, a lot will come up. I really like the Attachment Project. I think it's attachmentproject.com maybe. Attachmentproject.com has a really good one. There's also another one if you're really interested in like graphs and that type of thing. It is called, I want to say, My Personality .net. Okay, I'll find the other one and have Michelle send it to you guys. I can't remember what it's called, but the second one is actually my favorite, and it's the one that I send to clients, because not only does it tell you what your style is, it tells you how you attach to the different people in your life, and that also shows us which of your parents are responsible for the attachment disturbance. Okay, because we can see a graph. It will say, with your mom, you're securely attached. With your dad, you're avoidant or anxious or whatever. Like, it tells you all of those, and also what your general style is too.
Tell you what,
and then you can easily see.
Giving dinner.
Absolutely. And so with that, the reason I like it a lot is, as a hypnotherapist, it tells me immediately which pattern we need to follow back in order to get to the core to shift it in the hypnotherapeutic experience. So that's a really cool one. They also measure other things too, like the big 5 personality traits, happiness, all kinds of stuff in that same test. So I will find that and share it with you as soon as I remember what it's called. I think it's Your Personality.
I'll follow up and I'll attach it to this recording, so it will go out to everyone.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Any other questions before we continue? Nope. Okay, cool. So those are the attachment styles. Okay. The quick and dirty of attachment style is, if you're not a secure style, you want to date someone who has a secure style, or else it's likely, very likely, more than very likely, gonna be a very rocky relationship. Okay. So if you've had rocky relationships in the past, it was likely because of the attachment style. That's not the only thing that creates rocky relationships, but in terms of like feeling anxiety, if you felt a lot of anxiety in previous relationships, it was likely due to attachment styles. Okay. So continuing with match compatibility. So I mentioned there are 5 crucial components of compatibility that you really want to look at when determining if someone's a good match for you. And so the acronym is match, M.A.T.C.H. And so M is mission and values. And so this is going to be the most important component of compatibility. Your mission is where you're going, your values are why you're going. And together they intersect to form the foundation of your lifestyle, right? So our lifestyles directly tell us what we value, why we value it, all of that. Even if we don't necessarily have the words for what it is, look at your life and it is always going to be an example of your values. And so if your values aren't aligned with your partner, you're going to grow apart. And so when we think of getting to know people and compatibility, we often look at common interests, right? Common interests are great because they create common ground, but common values are actually what pave a common path, okay? And so if your relationship is solely based on common interests, if those interests change, the relationship dies, okay? Whereas if it's based on common values, no matter what, even if our interests change in the moment, we know that we're still going to the same place, we're headed in the same direction, the same destination together, no matter if in the moment I might not want to play tennis anymore, right? So common values are most important, but common experiences, common interests are also really nice to have, but you don't have to do all the same things. Like that's not necessarily what makes you you, right? So that is mission and values. Then we have attraction. So, you know, the pull, the call, the draw we have toward other people. And it doesn't have to be like an intense attraction. Often, connecting this back to the attachment styles, if attraction is really intense and like uncontrollable, that's often an indication that you're not as compatible as you think. Because what makes us really passionate about things, there are three things that, this is like a pro tip, like going into a whole different webinar that we can talk about just around how to create and sustain passion in your life. But there are three things that create passion, okay? Novelty, meaning when something is new, we are more excited about it, okay? Mystery, meaning when we don't know what to expect or something's unfamiliar, it also increases our engagement and curiosity, right? And then arousal. So specifically when we do things that get our emotions going, like ride a roller coaster, go to a scary movie or a haunted house, or any of those things that get our emotions flowing in our bodies, when we do that with a person, it also increases our passion with that person, okay? And so when we first meet people, when we first start dating, passion is easy. We don't have to do any work because they're a new person who we don't know anything about. And if we're attracted to them, we're doing new things together. So we naturally have all three components for passion, okay? However, at about the 2-year mark for every relationship, passion is naturally going to go down because now you're a lot more familiar, right? So the novelty goes away a little bit. Now I think I know everything about you, so I stop being curious, which means the mystery goes away. And we probably have gotten into a routine that doesn't include doing dangerous things all the time. And so the arousal is also going down in terms of like our emotional engagement with the world around us. So if you want to increase the passion in your life, get curious, right? Don't think that you know everything about your partner. Ask questions so that you can keep learning about them, because we're all changing every day, and that curiosity will stimulate passion. Do new things together, because again, the novelty does too. And this could be as simple as going to a new restaurant together, going to a new movie, visiting a new place, right? And then of course, the arousal, take dance classes together, go rock climbing together, go do the things that you used to do or that you've always wanted to do. And now it feels like we don't have time to do those things. Make time if you want to keep your relationship going. Okay, so now let's come back to this. Those things make us attracted to people. And so whenever we encounter someone who has the opposite values, they're going to be someone we don't understand as easily, which is both the novelty and the mystery, right? This is why people can be attracted to like the bad boy, because they're so different and it's exciting, right? And like all those things. But you can't be in a long-term sustainable relationship with someone who doesn't have value similarities. So when we say opposites attract, we're often talking about opposite values versus just opposite personality types. Opposite personality types can work. opposite values, they don't work over time. Okay. So it's about clarifying what you're actually attracted to in the person beyond just the physical. So yes, you have to be physically attracted to your partner, but your attraction is, your loins are a thermometer, not a GPS.
Okay, there's the line of the day.
Okay? Your loins are a thermometer, not a GPS. Great. Pregnant pause.
Thank you, Amari.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So then we have T, which is temperament. And so temperament is all about your personality. So the way you perform your identity, your energetic disposition, your unique orientation toward life, right? If your energetic temperaments aren't synergistic, your relationship will likely be tumultuous. And so this is where we can include attachment styles, right? Your attachment style is also similar to your temperament, the temperament you have for a relationship specifically. So we're also talking about any other personality tests or assessments you've taken and what that means in terms of compatibility, if they directly connect to relationships or not. Love languages, people often ask me, so if we have different love languages, does that mean we're incompatible? No. If you speak English and someone speaks Spanish, are you incompatible? No, you just learn each other's language and then learn how to translate, and then you become fluent in their language and you can speak to them in a way that they're most comfortable and vice versa. That's what love languages are, but they don't preclude you from being compatible with someone. So that's not what makes you compatible. But temperament wise, you should be able to get along with your partner. You should feel like you're on the same wavelength. And that's what we're really talking about here, your energetic temperament. If it doesn't feel like we just vibe, right? We're on the same frequency, they're probably not your person. Because where you are when you're at your most comfortable and where they are at their most comfortable energetically, if those aren't in the same vicinity, you're going to be uncomfortable when it's time for you to get comfortable. Make sense? So temperamental synergy. C is going to be the capacity to meet your needs. So we all have certain mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and even material qualities that we need in order to have our needs met long term. And so people often will fall for someone who has the potential rather than the capacity. And so you always want to make sure you're falling for people's capacity, not their potential. Potential might not ever develop in this lifetime, right? Whereas the only way to guarantee someone has the capacity to meet your needs in the future is that they have the capacity to do it now, okay? And then the only way you know if they have the capacity is if you know what your needs are. What'd you say?
Well, I gave an example of a client who was hoping that this potential partner could change who he was completely to suddenly be who she envisioned she would like a partner to be. But, you know, she wanted this very conservative adult male with a job who wants to buy a new house and make a home and drive her kids to and from school and help make the dinner and help homework and plan a vacation with her. But she was looking to a very young man who was still living at home with his mom, and he was into video games. There's nothing wrong with that, but she was hoping that he would suddenly be her mystery date dream come true, and he didn't have the capacity to make that change for her. And so I use the example of you have a cat, right? Yeah. Do you love your cat? Yeah. Do you think your cat loves you? Yeah. Do you think your cat is suddenly going to be this man overnight that you want this person to be in your life? And she's like, well, no. I'm like, don't expect this guy to be either. So a cat is a cat.
Exactly. Cat is a cat. Yes. So the only way to guarantee that someone has the potential or the capacity to meet your needs long term is that they have the capacity to do it now.
Oh, I thought the cat is
potential
a cat.
Is the icing.
Where they're at. A cat is a cat. Love them where they're at. Is the C. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep.
I got excited about
the way I like to think about this is, yes, about the cat. Potential is the icing. Capacity is the cake. Okay. Potential is extra. So sure, this would be nice someday, but if you're like, no, this is what I need, it can't be in the extra category. It has to be in the capacity category. Okay. And then finally, we have H, which is hazard free, also known as they can't have any of your deal breakers and vice versa. So this is the most simple. Know what your deal breakers are. Ask the questions to see if someone has any of your deal breakers. If so, guess what? No deal. Simple, right? Unless we believe that love is scarce, that we have to accept the BS, and that often comes from a very specific thing. So the number one belief we have to have in order to allow the love that we desire and deserve to enter our lives is that we are lovable just the way we are. Okay. Not once we lose a few more pounds, not after we get more education or after we make some more money or whatever. Right now, if you don't believe you're lovable the way you are, you will sabotage love every time it enters your life. Okay. You'll say no to the right people and yes to the wrong people. You'll not accept when the manifestation of your dream shows up right in front of you. You'll find some way to say no to it each and every time if you don't believe you're lovable. So that is like the core thing that we have to do if you struggle with love. Like everybody isn't struggling with love. Some people are just single and it's just like, oh, the relationship ended, but I'll be another one soon, no big deal. But if you're struggling in the relationship department and that same situation keeps happening over and over, it's likely because at some level you believe it has to be a struggle, which means you don't believe it can be easy, or you don't believe you deserve it to be easy, which means you believe you have to prove yourself worthy of it. And that is the working toward making you believe that I'm right for you, because I don't deserve it just as I am. So I have to do the work in order to deserve it, right? But that's not how it works, because you're lovable the way you are. And until you believe that, you won't let love in. Even once you say you believe that you have to work hard for it, even once you do all the work, you'll still find a reason why you haven't done enough work yet. That's how it goes. So we got to shift that belief.
You're going to love me when I'm like physically fit and working out and looking so good, you won't be able to resist me. It's like, but your insides aren't changing. Even if you do suddenly have this external manifestation. And I have another one who similar mindset. And he was like, my butt is going to be better looking than George Clooney's face. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of working out. But that he was not allowed to go see this mystery woman until his rear end was better looking than George Clooney's face. It's like, that seems like an unattainable goal. I mean, I'm sure his bottom looks good, but it's a high bar.
Definitely. So that is,
wait,
go ahead, Michael.
Yeah. So on your item of capacity to meet your needs, I like to add and wants. And I like your point.
Is that the potential icing, the wants?
So I'll let you finish first, Michael, before I respond to that.
Yeah. And then I loved your point that you have to know what you need and want.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So here's the way that I think about wants, right? Lots of people don't know what they need and they're trying to find what they want. And it's like, first we get clear on what we need. And we often see that the things that we want were connected to the things that we need. And if we get our needs met, the wants are inevitable. So I don't focus on wants as much, because the process that I take clients through where we like deduce these things, it's like, oh, all of that's there. So often the things we want are like the physical things. I want a 6-pack, but that's not necessary, right? I want you to make over, I don't know, 300K a year, but like, is it like a requirement? I don't know, but it would be nice to have. And that just goes in a different section of the match manifesto, right? So the physical things would go in attraction, right? We normally are attracted to a certain physical type of person. So that goes there. But the capacity to meet our needs is more of like the internal things that are required. And then The other thing, so like if we're talking financial, back to values a little bit, there are 5 key life values that you really want to make sure you're compatible on, especially like your top 2. If you rank these 5, what are your top 2? Make sure that those top 2 are also congruent with your partner. And so we have family, faith, fitness, finances, and profession. And so family is like, do you want kids? Yes or no, right? Do you want to live close to your family? How close are you? Like, what type of relationship do you require with family? And how does that look for our lives if we were together? Fitness is, what is your perspective on health? Are you a healthy eater? Do you work out 9 times a day? Like, what does that look like for you? And what does that look like for us? So that was family, fitness, finances. What are our beliefs around money? Are we investors? Do we like care about money that much? Are we more into impact than finances? Or are we more into finances than impact, right? So everything kind of has a place. And often when people think of wants, they don't realize that those are connected to their values in some kind of way, or to, you know, the attraction or something else. So usually we have it covered. In my experience of this, I haven't found anybody whose wants didn't make it to one of those categories, because in general, what we want is there's something inside of us that's telling us we need this for something. However, sometimes we will have this list of 1,000 different traits. And the way we blast through that list is by getting to the core of what we need. Once we do that, then we realize, oh, all this stuff actually doesn't matter anymore. But we were trying to find, you know, the right person based on what type of wrapping paper came on the outside package. And we forgot all about the actual toy we went to the store to buy. Like, right? So sometimes the wants are just the wrapping paper, but once we realize what we need, it's like, oh, I actually don't care about that anymore. And the things we do care about made it to the needs list in some kind of way. So yeah, but yes, they would go there. Know what you want and what you need for sure.
I would say that.
What was the 5th thing there? You said family, faith, fitness, finance, and what was the last one?
Profession.
Profession. Okay, thank you.
Profession. So if you won the lottery, would you keep working, or would you like not work anymore? Do you live to work, or do you work to live, right? Like how does your profession play out in your life? Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, Renee.
Oh, no, just to your point about needs and wants. I work with a lot of divorced men, and one of the biggest mistakes they make, and I don't know how to put this eloquently in here, so I'm going to just bottom line it, is they lost control of the relationship because they gave what they wanted, what the female wanted, not what they needed. And that is exactly where you have to meet everyone's needs. And it's a slippery slope once you start doing that. I was going to ask you, because you brought up something really well, everything you're saying is like, woo, but you talk about passion, novelty, mystery, and arousal, and capacity to meet your needs. First, are you going to at all address limerence? Second is, just leave it at that, because I don't want to leave it too much.
Say that one more time. You said limerence, like infatuation?
Yeah, like addiction, yeah. Limerence.
Yeah, we can totally look at that. So the way that this connects to what I've already outlined for you so far is going to go back to the attachment styles, right? That, but also the needs. If you don't know what you want, you're often going to, if you don't know what you need, you're often going to fall for what you think you want, right? Or what you think, or what other people have told you should want, okay? That's one. Two, infatuation is often a product.
There's no, how do you temper that? Because you can only guess
Say it one more time.
what you want based on what you think you want, or what someone else
we're gonna wrap that right on around, right?
Okay,
so if you don't know what you need, you're gonna fall for what you think you want. So sometimes, and this is probably something that will like click for everybody, but when you were growing up, how did you learn what a partner was supposed to be like for you?
Role models.
Parents.
Okay, role models, parents. What else?
Our own relationships with people and
What your friends at school said was cute and attractive, what you saw on TV, right? Like media is huge for conditioning us in terms of what we should want. Like a lot of us have things that we don't need just because we saw the commercial and they created a false desire in us for something that we didn't even care about until we saw the commercial. And that often happens in relationships too, where we get convinced by our exposure to ideas that come through the media, especially, that in order for me to be happy in a relationship, I need someone with this particular trait, right? Except we're all unique and we all need different things. And the easiest way to find out what you need is to look at your relationship history. But that's a slightly different conversation than we have the bandwidth to discuss today. But that's how you deduce what your needs are. You pretty much turn the bullshit into mulch from previous relationships. And so when it comes to infatuation, this is all about having an assumption or a fantasy rather than being grounded in reality. Okay. And so in terms of like, you probably had an experience where you wanted something and you were really clear on what the thing is, what the specs were and all of that. And when you experienced it, it was still cool, but you didn't feel like life was out of control, right? When you feel that out of control feeling, you know that something about what you are experiencing isn't grounded. It doesn't mean the person is wrong for you, but something about your current perspective and the way that you view that person is misplaced, because when we are infatuated and we aren't seeing things clearly, we're putting them on a pedestal, which goes back to believing we're lovable as we are. Because if we are lovable as we are, then we can love people as they are, and we don't have to project falsities onto other people and imagine that they are different than what they really are. We allow ourselves to get to know the real person. And so infatuation often happens when we are already at some level looking for an escape from what we feel like is drab in our own life, okay? And so when we get clear on what we need, and then we approach the dating situation, it's easier to sift through the smoke and mirrors because now we know what questions to ask based on what we actually need. So we won't fall into that same trap of falling for people who can't meet our needs, because now we know what they are and what we're looking for. So it's a lot easier to avoid the trap of getting caught up in someone who's, totally different from us or not right for us or whatever, because we have criteria to actually measure them against. That's not arbitrary criteria, but it's specific to who we are and what we actually need. So that's one part of that. So the other thing about infatuation is, just because we're excited about somebody doesn't mean it's problematic. It's only problematic when we allow that excitement to keep us from seeing reality, and we make these rash decisions and FS up. Okay. So when we are grounded in what we want and what we need, we have a lower propensity to do that, to experience infatuation in a detrimental way. Any other questions? Okay, so those are the 5 crucial components of compatibility: mission and values, attraction, temperamental synergy, the capacity to meet your needs, and being habit-free. So that's all I got, friends. Now the floor is all yours. Whatever questions you have, let me know.
Well, you've given us a lot to work from here. All right, people, let's dive on in. How can you, and I'm just setting you all up. People are coming in and leaving because of work, so it's all good. So based on the information that Amari has presented, how can you be more desirable, attract, and keep the right love in your life? What questions do you have?
So I don't know if I missed this or not. Can you hear me, Michelle?
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
The question that I have is, finding out what you need versus what you think you want. What kind of work does he recommend us doing to get to the actual what we need? And if he covered that in the beginning and I missed it, I can watch the recording.
Mari, you want to go speak?
Yeah, I didn't cover that yet. So I'll give you the quick and dirty. I think you're all smart enough to do this, even with my short piece of an explanation here. So in relationships, dating experiences you've had, if you've had 5 relationships, use those. So in order from most significant to least, but 5 of them. And you're gonna list the 5 assets that they had, the 5 things you enjoyed about the most, and the 5 things you enjoyed about them the least. So they're 5 greatest liabilities. And usually these are also going to be connected to the reasons you broke up in the first place, right? Then you're going to take those liabilities and invert them into assets. So for example, if the liability was that they were lazy, what you probably want is someone who's ambitious. If they were really insecure, what you probably want is someone who's confident, right? So you'll invert all of the liabilities into assets. Then you'll take all of those assets from both columns, the original assets column and the inverted assets column, and you will note which of those things repeat over and over and over, okay? Those are gonna be the things that you definitely need because those are patterns, right? And then you're gonna combine them. And so I would create a 5-column chart that says mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, material, right? And you're gonna put each of those traits, each of the assets into whichever category they go into. So now you can see which traits you tend to need the most. For a lot of people, they might have 1 or 2 columns where no traits went in. Great news, you didn't need those, right? Then you're gonna do that same chart again, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, material, and you're gonna rank each column. So just all the traits in the material column that you listed before, now rank them from most important to least important in that column, and do the same for all those columns. And then finally, once you've done that for each of the 5 columns, you're gonna take the top 10 traits overall from across those 5 columns. And then you're gonna rank those from most important to least important. And now you have those 10 traits that are the most important for you to have in a partner. Now there's some nuance here. Sometimes we might list things and we're like, oh, this is really important, but that's actually a value that wasn't a trait that goes in this list. So we might have to do some adjustment. But if you do this, you'll at least be in the right ballpark in terms of what you actually need from a partner to be happy. And then once you have that finalized ranked list of the top 10, the top 5 are non-negotiable. If they don't have those top 5, they're not for you. The bottom 5, you need at least 3. So altogether, they have to be an 8 out of 10 in order to be a good fit for you. And what you'll find is that, see what we did there? What you'll find is that the person you end up with will likely have all 10, but sometimes at first when we do this activity, we still have bits and pieces of beliefs of, oh, but. So what you want to do is before you even start dating, just notice people who have these traits, right? Notice the people around you, whatever gender you're attracted to, just notice people and note which of the traits they have. Because then it will start to show you that people actually exist that have the traits you're looking for. And after you do that for a while, now you have enough evidence to be able to believe that a person exists with all of them, because you're just noting which traits and how many the people around you have. And next thing you know, you'll find someone who has all of them. And you'll be like, oh, that didn't take long at all. So that's the quick and dirty of how to turn the bullshit from previous relationships into mulch, and also how to determine exactly what needs a person has to have the capacity to fulfill. And then you'll turn those into questions. So now when you're on a dating app or on a date, you're asking questions to get evidence of whether or not they have that trait. And those are the things you need to be asking anyway, rather than, oh, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? I mean, it's a fun question, but like it doesn't tell you whether or not the person is right for you. So yeah.
So here's a quick question. Have you put all that into a worksheet?
I have.
Is that something you could share with us?
I might be able to do that.
That would be awesome.
I can do that.
Because I wrote as many notes down as I possibly could.
Yep.
So when you were talking about physical, you mean physical appearance, or do you mean physical?
I'll send it to you guys.
Or do you mean physical as in sex? Because that's going to be hard to rank when you actually haven't had sex with the person.
I think it's
physical appearance specifically. So think, what did you say, Michael?
I think it should be both.
Yeah. So the thing about each of these categories, right? So I'm a matchmaker. So you think about it this way. If a matchmaker is going to match you, they need to be able to verify all the traits on your list, which means if it's something that's not easily seen by the naked eye, it's probably not something that would go on that list. However, if that's something that's really important to you, the question that we always ask with physical traits is, why is this actually important? So as an example, a lot of women especially will want a man who's tall, right? The taller, the better. But people don't often ask, why do I need someone who's tall? What we often correlate with height is a feeling of protectiveness. If you're taller than me, you're going to be able to protect me. So what you really want is someone who's protective, not someone who's tall. You just didn't know that that's what you were going for, right? And so when you have that, when you're clear that it was the protectiveness that I really want, now that opens you up to so many more people, because there are people of varying heights that will make you feel safe and protected in the way that you're actually looking for. And there are many people you dated who were tall and were like assholes that didn't make you feel safe at all. But you didn't recognize that it wasn't, the height was just a surrogate for the internal trait you were looking for, which was the protective.
So it's interesting that you.
So whatever physical traits you're after, just ask yourself why.
Ask yourself why.
I had a why. I wanted someone tall because I wanted someone that weighed more than I did and was able to pick me up.
And it's funny because I have a why too. I'm 5'8" and I want to be able to wear heels, which puts me at 6'1". And a lot of guys are intimidated being out with a female that's taller than them. So I want them to feel comfortable and be happy to be with me when I'm that way. So it's a reverse conversation for me. I'm more worried about they're not going to be comfortable around me. I don't know what to do with that.
Fascinating. So what you really want is someone who's going to be comfortable with you the way you are, regardless of how tall they are.
Right? Yes. That's exactly what I'm looking for, but I don't know.
So much easier to find. That's so much easier to find. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother, who's probably 5'10", 5'11", married a woman who's 5'11", and he's like, yeah, when she wears heels, he's like, yeah, I'm with her.
Yep.
Amari, I married a man who's 5'4" and weighs less than I do.
She married the right person.
Right. And he does make me feel safe. Yeah. So there was that aspect of it.
There it is.
That was a great example because one, Alex got a deeper understanding of what she's actually looking for, not what she thought she was looking for, or what I call FOBU, changing. Well, Alex, I'll speak to you because you're here, sorry. You don't want to change your behavior based on what you think other people might be thinking. That's not a reality. So, right. You know, as was brought up already, it's like, I guess Sonia's brother, it's like, meow, I get to be with this amazing woman, Amazonian woman. And yeah, put on the heels. We're going for that all the way. So really it's, are they comfortable with you being in your, who you actually are, in your stature, and owning it so that you can stand tall. Literally, you can stand tall in this relationship and your partner is comfortable and is adoring that. This is so good. So good. Amari, you're answering questions. I'm like, as you answer these questions, I'm connecting with the person on this group who's like, You gotcha. So good.
Cool, cool. Any others before we depart?
Okay,
Do you have a list?
Oh, go ahead,
Please
Alex.
got a question. I saw it like bulging out of you. What's your question?
No, Alex, go ahead.
My question was easy. Do you guys have a list of good questions that once we get through this kind of analysis that are good to ask?
So the questions that are going to be good to ask are always going to be dependent on what you need. So I'd recommend once you make that list, you turn those into interview questions, if you will. The other questions, I really like you probably heard of this, the 36 questions that lead to love, but I probably wouldn't ask those questions until you've gotten clear on like the preliminary questions around like your needs and deal breakers and things like that. Cause like you don't want to fall in love with somebody who's like wrong for you.
Right. That's something we can work on one-on-one if you want, Alex, because it's good to go through that whole list. And it's just like when we went through the list of values, so that, you know, it's a huge list and we value all the values. But when you find your top 5, you want to stay in alignment with that. Otherwise, with all the things, and Amari certainly highlighted those today, you want to be in alignment with the values so that you've got someone who's on the path for the long run, not just having similar interests. And this is another way that you can sift down the details. And we can put together exercises and worksheets and activities to quickly get to that. And then that's a really fun and easy way to come up with questions for people that will incite open-ended conversations that will give you, I mean, in that discovery phase of the relationship spiral, it gives you a chance to like find out what they're really about and be curious about what's interesting about them and how your life will change based on who they really are. And as the law of attraction brings you together, how is that going to manifest a really exciting time for you to go through the relationship spiral to chemistry and interactions to move forward in that? Cherie, what was coming out of you?
My question was, I'm hoping the answer is what I think it is, considering how it seems like you two met. Amari, have you written a book?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Yeah, my first book is called Lasting Love at Last, a gay guide to attracting the relationship of your dreams. And then my second book will be out in a couple months. It's called Love Alchemy, how to transform your love blocks into relationship gold.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome to put a link or anything that you'd like, Amari, if you want to. That's your choice.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Amari, final question for me was, you mentioned that people who are in a secure relationship can get there via therapy. Is there any insight into what you should look for in a therapist that would be good in finding that track?
Yeah. So if you have a secure attachment style already, there's nothing to change. But if you don't, so if you're anxious or avoidant or fearful avoidant, that's when you want to work with a therapist for sure. And so what to look for, if it's just like a general therapist, you want to look for someone who's trained in attachment styles or attachment therapy. You want to look for that specifically. You could also work with a hypnotherapist, and generally like you would just go and say, I have like relationship anxiety, or like I have an anxious attachment style connected to relationships. And generally most hypnotherapists will be able to help you. So it's a little more specific if you're doing traditional therapy, because hypnotherapy, we can go straight to those specific things. And most hypnotherapists are going to be trained to work with you on that. But yeah, somebody who has some experience working with that particular thing. Also, perhaps marriage and family therapists could be good. They might have a little more knowledge about that, but I would just check specifically. And then on that website we mentioned earlier, the Attachment Project, there are also like, I think, courses you can take that will help you to work through some of those as well. Yep. So fastest would be hypnotherapy. Self-paced would be the courses on that website, or whatever favorite therapist you have.
Any other questions?
How do you choose a good hypnotherapist?
You just come and work with me. Easy.
I think I can answer that in a way that you want someone who you can resonate with and feel comfortable enough and safe enough to relax and be vulnerable to share your true self with.
And the cool thing about hypnotherapists too is, like, you're not doing hypnosis before you do it, which means, like, when you have a consultation with someone, as Michelle said, you want to ask questions. You also want to listen to the responses they give you based on what your challenges and issues are. And so all hypnotherapists aren't created equal in that we can all do similar things, but some of us are trained in certain modalities that are better geared to solve certain problems, right? And so if you wanted to do weight loss, for example, you want to work with the hypnotherapist who works with a lot of weight loss clients, right? So weight loss, even though I can do it, it's not like my favorite thing to do or like my specialty. So I would refer you to someone else if you were doing something weight loss related. If you're doing anything just like general emotional, generally any hypnotherapist is going to help you with that, because what we are specialists in is emotion specifically, right, as a hypnotherapist. So it just really depends on what the specific issue you want to solve is, and then just have a chat with them and ask them about, their experience with that particular issue, and listen to how they answer your questions. Because I believe that, and this is also kind of what Michelle mentioned, that we resonate with people naturally. And so if you resonate with that person, it's usually a good sign that they're going to be a good fit for you to work with for that particular thing.
I would endorse Amari. And I can say that from personal experience, from what I told you all. I'm not sure if it was in the green room or live. But Amari interviewed me on the red carpet, and I had such camera fear. And of course, you're like, that couldn't be, but you know what? I get to have my own phobias, all I want. He asked me a question that wasn't one that I wanted. It was an totally appropriate question. It was about grief, and I'd written a book on widowhood, so that makes sense. But I was like, and left my body. I haven't had a lot of out-of-body experiences, but it was like the only way I could figure out how I could run away from that situation. That or pass out was an option. Those were the only two I could come up with. And when you see this in the recording, if you know me really well, you'll see that I look a little stressed. So, this all happened that fast. And I was like, he wants to ask me a question about grief, and I want to talk about rebuilding life and moving forward and, living life fully and all that. And it's like, oh, I have to address this. Okay, I'll give you what I think about grief. And then literally Amari reached down into the ethers and pulled me back into my body. And I'm like, here I am. Okay, I'll tell you what I think about grief. Grief is complicated and ambiguous, and it makes it difficult to get things done. Like, it blurs your vision when you're trying to drive, and it roams the house and smothers the children at night, and it slams your head against the kitchen wall, and grief drops you to the kitchen floor and puts its foot on your neck and prevents you from being able to breathe or see your future. And it was like, whoa. And I'm like, and understanding what grief represents to you, so you can identify what you treasure in that grief and honor that, so that you can hold that in the right space and move forward, as opposed to having grief having a hold on you. So I would say I trust Amari. Kind of a long version of my personal interaction of, he was there in a moment when I had a very, very challenging time. and pulled me back. And literally, like anyone who doesn't know me would be like, whew, she did it. But you all know me, so you would have seen me like, and obviously I'm good in front of the camera now. So thank you for that, Amari. But yeah, I would endorse Amari's abilities and skills. I think building a relationship through a program like this also shows that as well. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up.
Oh, I was just going to say that, but my specialty specifically is confidence, self-love, and all the things we've been talking about today. So around like attachment issues and stuff. But like smoking, not me. Weight loss, not me. Like those just don't, get my goat. So yeah.
You stay in your zone of genius.
That's it.
All right. Amari, thank you is like a really small word for all that you've been sharing with us. I was prepping everyone. I'm like, this is so exciting. We've come so far in this program, and you really gave us, based on what we've pulled together so far in the series, the timing is perfect on addressing relationships and how they're all about security, and where we fit on the abandonment versus fear of intimacy scale, based on what triggers anxiety, whether that makes you an anxious attacher, when you might fall into the anxious avoidant trap if you're an avoidant attachment style person, or if you're disorganized, maybe based on some childhood trauma, or if you're a secure attacher. And the 3 ways to make a change in that could be through a negative change might be through a traumatic experience. And the 2 positive ways to make changes in that over time are to enter a relationship with someone who's got a secure attachment style, or find a therapist who specializes in that. An attachmentproject.com was something that we talked about as a tool, and Amari's going to send us a link to another type of program that's super supportive, and I will include that link in this recording so you will have it. Amari, you also talked about match manifestos, which I love that word, with missions and values that are aligned with our partner, based on where you're going and why. The attraction that we have, which is like the passion level. And I kept thinking of like one of those recording boards where you like bump up the novelty. When the novelty gets pulled back, you want to bump up the mystery and the arousal in different ways, and techniques to do that. And I think the line of the day was, your loins are a thermometer, not a GPS. That was classic. Our temperament. And I was assessing that. It's like, what's your temperament, energy, frequency, set point? Where are you comfortable at? And finding somebody like that. Because if you get somebody who's on a really different frequency, you'd be like, hurry up, come on, catch up, or wait up for me kind of thing. The capacity to meet your needs. And we went into detail of how to figure out what your needs versus wants really are. And then to be hazard free. That was really good. With the crucial components of compatibility, the 5 values we want to match up are family, faith, fitness, finance, and profession. And that was really good. Those are, I think, my highlights that I took. Oh, you've got the link, yourpersonality.net/attachment/, and I'll keep that link in. Amari, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Happy to be here.
Thanks,
All right.
Amari.
Yeah. Okay. Mwah. Fantastic. We now have the understanding of our attachment style and how to find the right person for us and how to find the right match for you. Thank you so much.